The glass was brimming when she lifted it. It wasn't the laughter that cut the deepest. It was the hesitation before it. That brief pause when her eyes locked onto mine, her lips curling into a private, cruel little smile. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tipped the wine. It splashed cold across my scalp, then slid warm down my neck. Her sisters squealed. Friends slammed their palms on the table, tears streaming from the corners of their eyes. I didn't react. I didn't ask for a reason. I simply took a napkin, patted my face dry, and rose to my feet. The air seemed to tighten behind me as I left, their laughter following me down the hall. Outside, the night was motionless. I stood at the gate, breathing. 10 minutes passed. The latch clicked. Footsteps approached. 3 men in black suits stepped in. Every movement was deliberate. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They walked straight into the living room. I trailed them at a slow pace. Her laughter vanished the moment she saw them. One man placed a black folder on the coffee table. The other 2 stood like shadows behind him. I remained standing. Her friends shifted uneasily. One sister looked away. She forced a smile, but her fingers drummed nervously against her wine glass. She knew. 2 weeks earlier, I'd found the first crack, a dinner receipt stained with lipstick, tucked into her coat pocket. A date I hadn't attended. On the back, handwriting that wasn't mine. I told myself it meant nothing. It was the lie I needed to keep breathing. But the signs piled up, late nights returning home, a shower running before she kissed me, messages read and deleted before. I could glance at her phone, and then a stray conversation, a name I recognized, but had no reason to hear inside our bedroom. I never confronted her. I studied her. I mapped her patterns, which nights she worked late, which mornings she left earlier than needed. I noted the number she dialed from the balcony, the subtle shift in her tone when answering calls from names she wouldn't save. I reached out to someone who owed me. Quiet men, precise men. They tracked her routes, logged her stops, recorded her company, and the time she spent there. Within a week, they delivered photos, her fingers laced with his, their closeness erasing the very idea of space. Still, I didn't move. I waited. She grew reckless. Maybe she mistook my silence for ignorance. Maybe she needed to believe I was too weak to see. The wine she poured over my head was her final gamble. I let her believe she'd won. The man in the center opened the folder. Inside photographs, timestamps, transaction logs, hotel invoices. Her hands went rigid. Her friends stared at the contents as though the pages were toxic. I said nothing. I pushed the folder toward her. She flipped through it. Her face drained of color. When her gaze lifted, her mouth opened, but no words came. "You planned this," she finally whispered. I tilted my head slightly. Neither a nod nor a denial. Her eyes darted between her sisters and friends, searching for support. None came. I lifted the wine glass from her hand and set it gently on the table. Then, softly, I said, "I thought you should know what it feels like to be laughed at in public." Her breathing quickened. She looked at the men, then back at me. "Please." But I wasn't listening anymore. I turned to her friends. "You all should see who she really is. You laughed when she humiliated me. Laugh now." Silence. One of the men placed a single sheet on the table. A paternity test. The date was recent. The result was not in my favor. Her lips trembled. "I can." I leaned forward just enough for her to feel the weight of my calm. "You won't." I left the folder on the table and walked to the door without a glance back. The night air had cooled. Somewhere inside, she began to cry, a sound that once would have pulled me back. Not this time. There's a point when pain stops cutting deep. It turns clean. That's where I was. By the time I reached the gate, I no longer cared whether she explained, begged, or collapsed under the truth's weight. That was no longer my burden. I stepped into the street. The house behind me was just another building now, and she was just another stranger who once knew my name.